Have you ever walked into your boss's office expecting a routine conversation, only to realize that your entire life was about to change? That's exactly what happened to me. It started like any other workday. I arrived early, grabbed my coffee, answered a few emails, and planned to finish my tasks before lunch. Nothing seemed unusual. Then, just before 10 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a message from the company assistant. It was short, simple, and impossible to ignore. The CEO would like to see you in his office. At first, I thought there had to be a mistake. I was just another employee in a company with hundreds of people. My young boss rarely met with staff individually unless it involved a major project or an important decision. He was known for being brilliant, calm under pressure, and surprisingly humble despite leading a fast-growing business. Most employees only saw him during company meetings or special events. So why was he asking for me? As I made my way toward the executive floor, my mind raced with endless questions. Had I made a costly mistake? Was I about to receive a promotion? Or was something much bigger happening behind the scenes? Every step down the quiet hallway made my heart beat louder. The polished glass walls, the silent offices, and the serious expressions of people passing by only added to the tension. When I finally stood outside his office, I hesitated for a second before knocking. A calm voice invited me inside. The office was nothing like I expected. It was modern, organized, and surprisingly simple. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and my young boss was standing near the window instead of sitting behind his desk. He smiled politely and asked me to have a seat. There was no sign of anger or urgency, yet something about the atmosphere felt different. Almost personal. He didn't immediately talk about work. Instead, he asked how long I had been with the company, how I liked my job, and what my goals were. The questions seemed ordinary, but the way he listened made it feel as though every answer mattered. I couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation was leading somewhere unexpected. Then he opened a small folder that had been sitting on his desk since I walked in. He looked at the papers for a moment before looking directly at me. "I've been reviewing something about your past," he said quietly. My stomach dropped. How could my past have anything to do with my job? I had never shared much about my personal life with anyone at work. The room suddenly felt smaller, and the silence between us became almost unbearable. He slowly slid a single document across the desk. The moment I looked down at it, I realized this wasn't a normal meeting, and whatever was written on that page was about to change everything. For a few seconds, I couldn't bring myself to touch the paper. My mind was already imagining the worst. Maybe someone had filed a complaint against me. Maybe there had been an error in my employee records. Or maybe the company had discovered something I didn't even know existed. My young boss didn't rush me. He simply waited, watching my reaction with the kind of patience that somehow made the moment even more intense. I finally reached for the document with slightly shaking hands. At first glance, it didn't look like an official report or a performance review. It contained a few printed pages, a copy of an old photograph, and what appeared to be notes written by hand. The photograph immediately caught my attention. It looked worn from age, as if it had been kept for years. I leaned closer, trying to recognize the faces, but before I could study it carefully, my boss gently placed his hand over the folder and closed it. "Not yet," he said with a calm smile. "Before you see everything, there's something you need to understand." That sentence only made my curiosity grow stronger. He returned to his chair and folded his hands on the desk. His expression changed from professional to thoughtful, almost as if he had been carrying this conversation in his mind for a long time. He explained that during the past few weeks, he had been reviewing old company records connected to a project that started years before he became CEO. While searching through archived files, he came across information that unexpectedly led to my name. I couldn't understand how that was possible. I had joined the company only 3 years earlier. Before that, I had worked ordinary jobs, moving from one place to another, trying to build a stable career. There was nothing unusual about my background, or at least, that's what I had always believed. As he spoke, memories from my own past began to surface. I remembered growing up with very few answers about my family's history. Whenever I asked questions, the adults around me would quickly change the subject. They always told me that some things were better left in the past. Over time, I stopped asking. I focused on building my future instead of chasing old mysteries. My boss looked directly into my eyes again, as if he could tell exactly what I was thinking. "What I'm about to share isn't meant to upset you," he said quietly. "But once you know it, you may start seeing your own life very differently." Those words sent a chill through me. I glanced once more at the closed folder resting between us. Whatever was inside had already connected my past to this company, and somehow, to the young boss sitting across from me. The biggest question wasn't what the documents said anymore. It was why he had chosen to tell me now, after all these years. I tried to read his expression, but my young boss stayed calm, almost unreadable. The silence in the room felt heavier now, like it was holding something back that neither of us wanted to say too quickly. Outside the glass walls, the city moved normally, but inside that office, everything felt paused. He finally stood up and walked slowly toward a shelf behind his desk. He pulled out another thin file, different from the first one. This one looked newer, but still marked with old reference codes from company archives. He placed it on the table, but didn't open it yet. "There's more than one connection," he said. "And that's what makes this complicated." That line made my thoughts spiral even more. I began to wonder if this was about my performance, my identity, or something far deeper tied to my family history. I remembered small details I had ignored for years, missing documents, unanswered questions, and the way certain relatives always avoided talking about my early childhood. At the time, I thought it was normal. Now, it felt different. My boss then mentioned a name I hadn't heard in a long time. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just spoken softly, but it hit me harder than anything else in that room. My chest tightened instantly, and I felt like the ground under me had shifted slightly. He noticed my reaction but didn't stop. Instead, he said there were people inside the company who also knew parts of this story, but none of them had ever connected it fully. Some had stayed silent, while others might have intentionally avoided it. That raised a new question in my mind. If this was just about old records, why had it stayed hidden for so long? And why was my young boss the one bringing it up now, personally calling me into his office instead of handling it through official channels? I looked at him again, trying to understand whether he was revealing the truth, or stepping into something even he didn't fully control. The room felt even quieter after that. My boss slowly pushed the second file closer to me, but this time, I didn't rush to open it. Something inside me warned that once I saw what was inside, there would be no going back to the life I had known before this meeting. He leaned back in his chair, watching me carefully. "I didn't call you here to confuse you," he said. "I called you because the situation is getting harder to control." Those words stayed in my mind. Control. Situation. Connection. Nothing about this felt like a normal office discussion anymore. It felt like I had stepped into something much larger, something that had been building long before I ever joined this company. I finally opened the second file. Inside were printed reports, old employee records, and a few handwritten notes that seemed to connect different timelines together. I noticed repeated references to a project that had been shut down years ago, something I had never heard about in my department. But what shook me most was not the project itself, it was how many times my name appeared in different forms across those documents. My breath slowed as I tried to make sense of it. My boss didn't interrupt. He let me read, page by page, as if he wanted me to discover the truth at my own pace. But every page only raised more questions instead of answering anything. I asked him directly, my voice lower than I expected, "What does all of this have to do with me?" For the first time, his expression changed slightly. Not fear, but concern. Before he could answer, his phone vibrated on the desk. He glanced at the screen, and for a brief second, he didn't move. The calm atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. He looked back at me and said quietly, "We don't have much time. Someone else already knows you're here." The moment he said, "Someone else already knows you're here," everything inside me froze. I instinctively looked toward the office door, half expecting it to open at any second. The silence outside the room suddenly felt dangerous, like even the hallway was listening. My boss didn't wait for me to react. He quickly closed the file in front of me and locked it inside his desk drawer. His movements were calm, but faster than before, like he had shifted into a different mode. The same man who had been speaking so softly just minutes ago now looked alert, focused, and slightly tense. "Listen carefully," he said in a low voice. "This isn't just about old company records or your employment history. It goes deeper than that." I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. My mind kept trying to connect the dots, my name in multiple files, the hidden project, the sudden urgency, and now this warning that someone else was watching. It all felt like a puzzle I never agreed to solve. Before I could ask anything else, the office lights flickered for a second. It was small, almost unnoticeable, but enough to make both of us pause. My boss immediately walked toward the blinds and slightly tilted them, looking outside the glass wall into the corridor. His expression tightened. "There are security cameras in this building," he said. "But not all of them belong to the company." That sentence hit me harder than anything before. I suddenly realized this wasn't just an internal issue. There was something external involved, something that might have been tracking movements, conversations, maybe even me before I stepped into this office. My boss returned to the desk and lowered his voice even more. "The project you saw in those files was never fully closed. It was transferred, hidden under different departments, and erased from official records. But some people still have access." I asked him who they were, but he didn't answer directly. Instead, he slid a small card toward me. It looked like an access pass, but there was no logo, no company name, just a code printed in black ink. "You didn't come here by accident," he said slowly. "And now that you've seen part of it, you're officially part of it too." Before I could process those words, another notification flashed on his phone. He looked at it, and this time his face went completely serious. "They've moved," he whispered. "And they're coming upstairs." The words "coming upstairs" felt like the final signal that everything had shifted beyond control. My boss didn't hesitate this time. He quickly stood up, grabbed the access card he had given me, and pointed toward a hidden door behind the bookshelf. I hadn't even noticed it before. "We don't have time to explain everything," he said firmly. "But if you stay here, you'll be found. If you come with me, you might finally understand why you were brought into this." I had no choice but to follow him. We moved quickly through a narrow passage that connected to a different section of the building. The air felt colder there, and the silence was deeper, almost unnatural. As we walked, I could hear faint footsteps above us, slow, steady, like someone was searching room by room. My boss stopped at a secured panel and used the access card. A door unlocked with a soft click. Inside was a small room filled with old monitors, archived files, and system logs. It looked like a hidden control center that had been sealed away from regular employees for years. "This is where it started," he said. "And this is where it ends." He showed me something on one of the screens. My name appeared again, but this time alongside a detailed record of events I had no memory of: interviews, background checks, and even a reference to a confidential program that supposedly ran years before I joined the company. I stepped back in shock. "This can't be real," I said. "I've never been part of anything like this." That's when he finally told me the truth. I wasn't just an employee. I had been part of a long-term internal transition project without knowing it, selected years ago because of a connection to a legacy system the company was rebuilding. My entire hiring process, my records, even my placement in the company had been quietly influenced to bring me here at this exact moment. But before I could fully process it, the system alarm in the hidden room suddenly activated. Red lights flashed across the screens. Then a final message appeared on the monitor. "Access confirmed. Subject identified." My boss turned toward me, his expression changing one last time, not surprise, but acceptance. And then he said something I never expected. "The project didn't bring you here to observe it, it brought you here to restart it." For a moment, I couldn't move. The words on the screen kept flashing, and the alarm sound filled the hidden room like it was warning us of something already in motion. My boss stood still beside me, watching the system like he had been waiting for this exact outcome all along. I turned toward him, trying to find anger or confusion in his face, but there was none. Only calm acceptance. "Restart it." I repeated slowly. What does that even mean? He took a deep breath and finally stepped closer. It means the project was never about replacing systems or departments, he said. It was about continuity. People were part of it, and you were the missing link needed to complete what was left unfinished. My mind struggled to accept it. All my life, I believed I had worked hard to build my own path, my own career. Now I was being told that pieces of my journey had been carefully guided without my knowledge. The feeling was unsettling, but strangely, everything I had experienced in the past few hours suddenly made sense in a painful way. The footsteps outside grew louder. Whoever was coming upstairs had reached the floor just above us. My boss quickly moved to the control panel and began typing something into the system. The screens shifted, showing a series of confirmations and reset commands. This is your decision now, he said quietly without looking at me. If you walk away, everything shuts down permanently. If you continue, the system stays alive, and you take full control of what was started before you even knew your name was part of it. I looked at the glowing screens, then at the access card in my hand. The weight of everything I had learned pressed heavily on me. My past, my identity, my entire role in the company, all of it felt rewritten in a way I could no longer ignore. The alarm suddenly stopped. Silence filled the room. Then the system displayed one final message: user acceptance required. I closed my eyes for a second. Not because I understood everything, but because I finally realized something deeper. Some truths in life don't come when you are ready, they come when you are already standing in the middle of them. When I opened my eyes again, I placed my hand over the confirmation panel. And in that moment, everything changed. The screen stabilized, the hidden room lights returned to normal, and my boss finally exhaled as if a long burden had been lifted. Outside, the footsteps stopped. Whatever was coming was over. But as I looked at the system logs one last time, I noticed something unexpected. A new line had been added automatically. New operator profile created. And my name was no longer just a record. It was now the beginning of something I still didn't fully understand.